Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to our webinar specifically for the legal sector called The Benefits of Content Marketing. Quick introduction first of all. In terms of myself, I'm Andy Donaldson, as you can see in the presenter notes. I look after a large part of the strategy here for legal and also retail clients, but specifically for legal clients. So we're going to be drawing on a little bit of my experience through the next sort of 45 minutes. With the idea being is hopefully we'll give you a little bit of a guide as to certainly in this particular webinar, which is a series of 1 of 4, just a guide on some basics, what content marketing is, a little bit of information to get you started essentially of content marketing for your law firm. We're assuming that the audience doesn't necessarily know a lot about content marketing, so apologies if that insults anybody's intelligence, but it's better just starting from the ground up. As I mentioned, this is a series of 4 webinars that progressively go into more and more detail about the topic of content marketing and specifically how it can help law firms attract leads, basically. In terms of our pedigree, we work with a large selection of law firms from personal injury, the sort of fixed fee side of the case spectrum, right away through to serious injury, including spinal and brain. So we kind of know the spectrum of leads that law firms are targeting, and I'm sure the audience today will be familiar with that range and be targeting somewhere between the higher value cases at the serious injury end of the spectrum right the way down to fixed fee. So content marketing can work for all of those areas. The series of this 4 webinar series is taken from an ebook which gives 9 tips essentially for law firms when they are looking into content marketing. So what the purpose of the webinar is just to bring that ebook to life, basically. So if you've got the ebook and you're registered for this webinar because of that, then great. But if you just jump straight onto the webinar reservation because it's of interest, then please be aware that that we've also got an ebook. So jump onto our download section under the legal section of our site, and feel free to download it from there. Okay, so let's get started. So as you can see from our wonderful graphics, content marketing is a journey. It's something that you need to build into the fabric of all of your marketing activity. I think the biggest mistakes that we find with legal firms that start content marketing is that they think it's just a case of creating some content about a topic that's relevant to the legal space, put it on their blog, and that's where it sort of starts and finishes, really. Content marketing really needs to be a little bit more of a thought through process for that. And hopefully at the end of these next couple of slides, this next sort of 35-40 minutes, you'll understand that first of all there's quite a lot more to it than just writing a piece of content essentially. So we're going to start our journey with an overview of content marketing. So first of all, what is it? Well, let's look at the traditional inbound marketing framework that you guys may be looking at. Particularly law firms are following a type of inbound marketing methodology anyway, and it's very similar to ourselves. Our own marketing is how we look at things, and we want to try and utilize or try and touch the 4 main areas of attracting, converting, closing, and delighting customers all along the way. And that's from our point of view. From a legal firm's point of view, they want to really attract, close, and delight leads so that you can help them with any claims that they may have across the legal spectrum. Where content sits into this framework really is on every single part of that. Content can be used to attract strangers, convert them into visitors, close them as leads, and then content as part of email content and any other work you do following payout of a case, for example, can really help delighting customers and converting those into promoters. So what we're interested in doing is trying to create content that is evergreen, that lives, isn't a piece that is written and forgotten about. It will continue to drive traffic to your site, and particularly if you think about this inbound methodology, this framework of content sitting into these 4 areas, it'll really help you with your creating a content plan, which we're going to come on to shortly. I just thought it was worthwhile framing this and Because again, I mentioned at the start that sometimes people believe that content is more further down the marketing funnel. It's a converting piece, and some people believe it's right at the start. Well, actually, it's part of everything, really. So what makes it fly? I mentioned at the top of the webinar that one of the biggest downfalls of legal firms is they just believe that creating content is the only thing they need to do. We've got to really make it fly. We've got to get it off the ground, and that's done by something that we'll touch on later on in the next couple of slides, which is personas. We've got to really create a individual piece of content or a collection of content that fits the right piece of content. We'll come on to that in a second, and it's at the right place and the right time, framed by it being written for the right persona. If we don't do all of these 3 or 4 things, then content will just sit on your site. It won't get seen, it won't get read, and certainly when people do find it and do read it, it won't be something that's worth engaging, and certainly won't move people from the stranger part of the inbound marketing methodology through to the visitor or even through to the lead section, which is what we're interested in doing as part of this webinar series, helping you get more leads. So we need to just put a little bit of thought into that, and I'm going to tell you how you do that. Just some stats for those listening on the podcast. I'll read these out. Content marketing can help you generate 3 times as many leads as traditional outbound marketing tactics and can cost 62% less. And that was a comment made by Demand Metric. Marketingland stated that 44% of B2C marketeers said they had a content marketing strategy in place, but they didn't bother documenting it. It's an interesting point that we'll come on to how to document a content strategy. And again, it's not just a case of writing down a list of blog posts and posting them. So there's a bit more to it than that, which we'll come on to. And then finally, I guess one of the most important ones to read and listen to, so a bit of a tip there, and that's by the Content Marketing Institute. They create sort of thought pieces for many different sectors. So it's well worth the listeners sort of following up on that and having a look at their website. They said, when asked which social media platforms are used to distribute content, 94% of B2C businesses listed Facebook. And B2C, it's an interesting topic, really. So law firms would largely fit into a B2C model, although you're not selling something to a customer, but you're offering a service, and so it fits into that. So interesting point there by Content Marketing Institute, and their website is really something I'd recommend. So let's define it, and this again is defined by the Content Marketing Institute, and they say, quote, the marketing and business process for creating and distributing relevant and valuable content to attract, acquire, and engage a clearly defined and understood target audience with the objective of driving profitable customer action. Wow, it's a bit of a mouthful, that, but essentially that slide that we looked at there, which is the right piece of content targeted the right persona at the right place and the right time, is kind of what they're saying there. They're really sort of saying, look, if you're going to create something, make sure it's to a target audience specifically, and that it's the right place and right time, right topic. If you get that right, content marketing can be the biggest driver of traffic to your site. Now, bear in mind, content marketing sits under the umbrella of SEO, search engine optimization. Really, when you're looking for organic growth through your SEO marketing channel, then content marketing really needs to be bolted onto that. So it's, I'm sure you've had marketing meetings, maybe even this week or towards the end of last week, with your SEO agencies, and the discussion has been, how do we double our leads? How do we double our traffic? How can we increase in 2016 from where we were in 2015? Most law firms we deal with at the moment are looking at content marketing seriously and investing money in it, and that's where they're getting their leads from. So however you do that, if we can help you do that, then great. If you're doing it internally, then great. If you use another agency, then that's fine, but just make sure that there is, over these next series of webinars, particularly this first one, that you've got these thought processes in mind, you've got these documents in mind, you've got these pieces of software in mind that will help you build, assess, distribute, and measure your content marketing that you're doing. Just one other nod at this point, since we mentioned SEO, content is also part of, a lot of people put it into a phrase of content and outreach. So when we're talking about content marketing, we're talking about creating the content and outreaching it to your target persona. So there's 2 things going on there. We do go into outreach in a little bit more detail further down the line in this series of webinars. Content doesn't need to be 400 words of text. It can be, but again, if you think about your personas, and we'll come on to that in a second, if you think about who you're writing for and what vehicle they want or best engage with, if you're writing for, let's say, 25 to 30-year-olds, maybe they would prefer a more visual piece of content than maybe an older demographic, maybe vice versa. Also think about where it's going to be distributed. So are you looking at reaching out to bloggers? Are you looking at reaching out to industry sites? Think about both the audience and also where it's going to eventually go. Here's a few that both we've created for various law firms we work with. So you can see the brain injury infographic there. Essentially, the message is assistance, it's help, it's saying these are some of the signs of injury. When should you call a doctor or get some further advice? It just gives you a bit of a background, a visual reference, and this particular piece of creative was written for a specific set of bloggers that, again, prefer a more visual piece of content. Same for the Frightening Fangs on Film, which is for a dental law clients of ours. Again, it gets the message across to a very specific younger audience, potentially, about the various sort of teeth and fangs, as it were, that's been recorded on film over the years, and it was just a little bit of a light-hearted nod. Again, the audience that we were focusing on, that we're going to engage with this infographic, and the place that it was outreach to, was very, very carefully thought through, and I'll go on to that. Hill Dickinson are doing a great job at the minute with some of the children's calendar work that they do, part of their content marketing piece. And then finally, two pieces of software to make a note of. ThingLink is, first of all, it allows you to create visual pieces of content that are moving or movable. We've got some examples that we can send you following this webinar, but if you just go to ThingLink, I believe it's .co.uk, it might be .com, so don't quote me, there'll be one of them, but if you do a search for ThingLink, all one word, it will pop up, and it allows you to, essentially it's an online piece of software. You can upload a graphic into it, some images, and then you can have various call out points or hotspots on that infographic that sort of jump out, and it'll give you a description of what's under the infographic. So in this example, the brain injury one, if you hovered your mouse over any of those little circles that you can see, those circles would embellish and a piece of text would come up, and then there'd be a link directly through to that specific client's website. So it really is a good way of generating good quality links back into the site from a very, very good piece of content, and that's all done by using the ThingLink software. So definitely check that out. And then finally at the bottom, Boombox is a really cool system that allows you to generate quizzes, essentially, or surveys, but really visual ones. Again, do a search for Boombox, and it's, as I said, it's fairly straightforward to use. So definitely worth looking at for those two pieces of software. So the point of this slide really is that it doesn't have to be, as I mentioned, a 400 word blog article. Sometimes they are needed. A lot of the time they are definitely needed, and particularly in the legal space, when you're creating content for legal outreach, a lot of the time what is required by the various high quality blogs that we deal with on a daily basis, they do want an opinion piece, they want text, essentially. So that's fine, we can do that, but certainly complement the basic blog articles, the basic news stories, the basic PR, with some more visual elements. It's definitely a good spread and a good way to build engagement and to make this content evergreen, which is what we're interested in. It's not a one-off, hit. So another tip: when content is being created, what we do in-house here with our legal content team is that they sit down and we have this metric. So it's a bit of a freebie for you. Feel free to take it away and use it in your own teams. It is a bit of a graphic. So when we're creating, when we go about our persona work and some other bits and pieces that we go through in terms of setup, which we'll talk through next, once we've created a piece of content or are thinking about creating a piece of content, there's a check at the start of that process and a check at the end of the process, and that check is, are we doing at least 2 of the 4 pillars of this diagram here? If we're doing 3 or 4 out of the 4, then great. Let's just go through them. So first of all, by creating that piece of content, are we helping the audience that's going to be engaging and the places that particular piece of content is going to be outreach to? Are they going to be doing something new? So are we going to be telling them something new about the legal space, about the claims process, about brain injuries, about slip and trips, or are we going to tell them that the process is going to be quicker through yourselves or through ourselves. Are we going to make or save the money? It's an interesting one here, particularly with a fixed fee case coming along now. But are we going to tell them how transparent we are? Are we going to tell them that all of the fees go to them and be specific about that? There's no reason why with legal content we can't entertain. I think sometimes traditionally, with all due respect, traditionally legal firms tend to look at a more serious angle because of the nature of the claims that they're dealing with, and that's wholly accepted and understood. But I think what we've tried to do over the years with working with legal clients is try and take a very serious subject, deal with it with kid gloves and make sure that we're not offending anybody, but try and add a small amount of entertainment and education or information into that piece. And a good example of that was the infographic about brain injury that we've just seen, so feel free to go back and have a look at that. Entertain, don't forget, doesn't mean that we sit up and tell jokes for 10 minutes. It just means something that's much more visually engaging, that keeps people reading, I guess, and therefore entertained. And then finally, I mentioned at the very, very top of the webinar that a lot of law firms fall down at the approach to content marketing by saying we just need to write blogs and get them out there. Now, there is some value to that. So maybe I was being a little bit flippant at the start that that that's not necessarily the right way to go about it. Sharing content makes you as a law firm look good. It positions you as an authoritative voice in the space that you're dealing with, whether it's serious injury, whether it's PI, whether it's RTA or car accident specific, or workplace accidents, or medical, whatever your specific area of expertise is. Sharing content that's accurately distributed to a very specific target audience about a very specific topic is a great way to make you look good in addition to your competitors. So there is value in that, but there's a lot more we need to use content marketing for. So if you tick 2, 3, or 4 of those boxes, then continue with creating your content and continue with distributing your content. If you find that you're only helping somebody save some money, or you're only entertaining them, or you're only just sharing content, as I mentioned at the top, then go back to the drawing board, think a bit differently and a bit more creatively about what you're trying to create. I just thought at this point it's worth sharing this slide with you because it really does, certainly from our legal content team's point of view, it really does narrow the field of vision and make sure that they're self-assessing along the creation process. So we understand the definition of content marketing as per the Content Marketing Institute. We understand some of the things, tactics that you need to consider when looking at a content marketing, a content and outreach creation process. But what should the approach be? We've mentioned personas a few times here, and this is one of the most important things. This will make sure your content flies off the shelf or sits on your blog and does nothing. So we go through a process, and the process essentially is going through a large list of questions that we ask our legal clients, and questions that we ask our legal clients to ask of their customers. And the answer, those types of questions can be anything that sort of says, what type of content do you engage with before you made an inquiry with us? Are you more likely to engage with a visual piece of content or a text piece of content? And what's your age? What's your gender? Where do you live? What time do you spend online? Do you spend more time on social media than search engines? And just building up a huge raft of questions that touch anything from standard demographics to more interesting areas of background and what we call identifiers, which essentially, once we've got a demographic, once we've got a background, an identifiers really drills into a specific identity of that person, basically. And what the questions do, we collate all of the answers and we look at the target area of business that we're looking at. So let's say medical negligence, for example. We want to build a persona for everyone that is likely to in the future or has had some form of medical negligence claim or issue ongoing previously or likely to, or thinking about thereof. And we split the output of those questions into what we call a physical persona. So we look at background. So there's an example here. We put a name to the persona. So this one's called Family Fiona. We identify with an image based on the background. So this particular family are obviously in a relationship, married, 1 to 2 children, and part-time works, that spend most of their time at home, particularly the female in this particular persona of the base. That's different in other personas sometimes. We find now particularly a lot of claimants have the male with normally a national account manager type role that is based at home. So sometimes you can have both parents at home, or one or the other. But in this particular case, we identified that the female relationship was at home. Age between 25 and 34, C1 income level, suburban dwellers. Again, we're starting to build up a nice picture of who these people are visually. We can see there, we know what name we've assigned to them, and identify. So they love to watch films and TV series, like to read about celebrities, entertainment, and researches on a mobile phone and tablet. So you can start to see, when we're starting to think about who we're creating content for, having a tiled physical persona like this stapled to our wall or our workstations or within our marketing team, we can really start to identify how to go after our strangers and how to start converting them into visitors, into leads, and into promoters. We go into a little bit more detail, I believe, on some of the later webinars on how to create personas and what some of those questions are. But if you have any questions on that, then please ask in the chat. There is some time at the end to answer some questions, so please fire some questions through via the chat on this GoToWebinar system. But really important, integral as part of any content marketing campaign, and my advice would be to spend equal amount of time on the persona creation along with documenting your content. So again, one of the comments that we pulled out from one of the sources earlier on in the webinar, we noticed that I think it was 63% or 62% of people don't actually document their content marketing process. So my question to them would be, how do you measure success from something that isn't documented? And it goes back to my point originally, where particularly a lot of law firms will create content for content's sake and believe that they are doing, in brackets, content marketing by having a blog that's regularly updated maybe once or twice a month. The biggest part, if you can imagine content marketing in three main chunks, which is what we're guiding you through in this webinar really, one of which is understanding what you're trying to do in terms of the grand scheme of things of your marketing and your SEO and your outreach. The middle section really is who you're talking to, and being as direct as you can to what personas you want to have that open dialogue with and attract to your website. And the final section we'll come on to shortly really is the measurement of it. But before we get to any of those stages, you need to have a document in place that that really sort of we can go back to and say, well, that blogger, that piece of blog, sorry, that went out to that specific blogger generated this keyword position increase. So again, going back, tying it into our SEO progress or organic listing progress. And then when we come on to measurement, we'll show you how we can follow that through to measuring leads, basically. So feel free to, I mean, it's a very basic Excel document here. So, you know, again, feel free to copy and paste. It's not a massive copyright issue, this one. But let me describe what we're trying to achieve here, really, and feel free to follow this process through. So you'll see at the very top, we split our content into 3 parts of the funnel. So the top part of our inbound marketing funnel is our awareness pieces. So that's that sort of pinky red section. And the middle, then the second section is once we've brought people to the site by a certain type of content, we then need to engage them further when they arrive on the site with some more interesting content. That can be a webinar, it can be a more detailed ebook, it can be a free conversation, whatever it may be, but it needs to be a more detailed piece of information because you've got that person coming back to the site from an awareness point of view. They're aware of you now, they're on the site. We need to hold their hand down this buying process a little bit further until they make create an inquiry or whatever the action on the site may be, maybe make a phone call. And then finally, once they've, let's say they've arrived at the site from an awareness piece, which I'll describe what that is in a second. We've got them onto a webinar, they've listened to us, we're engaging with them like I am with you guys now. And the next stage in the process then is potentially to offer them a conversation on the phone. So we're moving them towards that bottom converting part of the funnel then. So we need to think about creating our content in those 3 very key, very distinct areas. If, again, going back to my point about just right creating content for content's sake, the middle funnel and the bottom funnel are the areas that tend to get missed off when law firms just create content for content's sake. They're only doing that ready pink section at the top, which is the awareness piece. So let me explain awareness pieces. Awareness pieces are identified by a persona. So going back to our family Fiona persona, we need to think about what she or he is interested in engaging with. We know that they're interested in spending more time on mobile and tablets, so we need to bear that in mind in terms of our imagery used. We then need to come up with some keywords initially, so you can see there's a keyword column. We need to look at which keywords are difficult to rank on and which ones aren't. And therefore we can look at popularity by just typing in those keywords that we want to try and target the article against into Google, and it'll give you an idea of the volume of searches. And then if it's got a certain volume of searches, it's probably going to be more like 10 out of 10 difficulty. If it's not got that many searches, it's probably got more like 1 out of 10 difficulty. What we want to try and achieve is keywords that will give us probably about a 5 or a 6 difficulty, so not massively generic keywords, so personal injury, avoid, accident claims, avoid. But if it's medical negligence, for example, for Family Fiona, maybe a keyword might be medical negligence injury claims at work. So something that's a bit more specific, that might be around 5 or 6 in terms of difficulty. And the reason being that we don't want to be too specific on keywords in terms of being generic on keywords is because people that type in a more specific keyword string are more likely to convert in the shorter term. So while we don't want to ignore our generic keywords because they're really important to drive traffic, they're going to convert really low. So the purpose of content marketing is you want to get your articles in front of someone right at the end of that buying cycle. They're ready to engage with you, and that's what you've got to try and focus on when you're creating content for the legal space. So list your keywords, work out the difficulty, and then work out what the blog title is. So awareness is all about writing your persona down, working out what your keyword volume is, working out what the difficulty is to help you with your keywords, keyword selection, and then look at your blog title. And the reason why the blog title is important after keyword research is because guess what? We need to try and include some keywords into your blog title. That's the surefire way to get you as high up in Google News as quick as possible. My advice in terms of volume of content for the awareness part of the funnel is if you can, create 1 per working day, so 20 articles a month if you can. Now that's a big resource, but the Content Marketing Institute stipulates that if the more frequently you blog, the more success you'll have. It's as simple as that. Volume is key in this game. Targeted volume is key in this game, I should say. So as a business, from a hit search point of view, when we're trying to communicate with our target audiences and our target personas, we generally write 1 a day. If you look on our blog, you'll notice that, and that's split across legal specialisms and also retail, the 2 main areas that we deal with as a business. So we try and preach as you know, do as we preach, as it were. So try and do 1 a day. Worst case scenario, I generally mean this, try and do 1 or 2 articles a week, 1 as your bare minimum. So you're looking at 4 a month, but it'll take you a lot longer to build up your sort of your stamina and your exponential growth in terms of the traffic that's coming from your news articles. I've completely missed out on purpose the fact that you'll need a blog on your site. If you haven't got one, WordPress is a great example, nice and easy to bolt onto any site, and will be a good platform to store all of your content. So that's awareness. Middle funnel, I've mentioned. A webinar is a great way to engage further. A lot of the audience on this particular webinar will have downloaded the ebook and realized that we were advertising the webinar there and then. So this is, excuse me, this is the middle funnel content that we're offering you guys, which is pretty much a step-by-step guide over 4 webinars of how to set up your content marketing essentially and measure it. So in this example, try and look at, again, some of your keywords that you're looking to use. Again, then write some of your, we've put blog titles there, but if you're talking about a webinar, what's your webinar title? So we, you know, it's again, looking at this webinar title is very specific to content marketing, and therefore it makes a big difference. Finally, bottom of the funnel is really, sorry, just to go back to middle funnel, you're probably looking at, if you're looking at 20 articles per month for awareness, you're probably looking at maybe 3, 4, possibly 5 articles, so maybe 1 a week would work. So try and do a webinar a week if you can, but again, middle funnel really is it lives and dies by the awareness stage. So if you can, you know, it's more important to put all your effort into doing 1 or, you know, potentially 2 or 3 if you can a week in terms of the awareness stage, because that will feed into your middle funnel section. So maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 a month on your middle funnel. And then finally, your bottom of the funnel, that can be some kind of offer. So it can be, so for example, for you guys, the offer here is that we can do you a content plan. We can have a half-an-hour conversation specific to your business. So that's the type of end of the funnel or bottom of the funnel content offer that we'll be offering you guys further down the line. So that gives you a bit of an example of how to sort of close off this whole funnel. Again, guys, any questions, drop them via the chat, and I'll approach those at the end. So we've looked at our personas, identified them, put some time into research in those areas. We've documented our content, which is valuable and really important, because how do we then measure ROI from our content? So is it working? So you get to a stage as marketing people where you will say, right, we're going to go down, hit search, say we need to do this content marketing, we're going to go and do this content marketing. They've given me a blueprint for how we'll go about it. And they'll go to the bosses, the powers that be, the owners of the law firms, and say, this is what we need to do. The first question you'll get back, because I know, because I'm in these situations almost on a daily basis with law firms, they will come back, the owners of the business will come back and say, how do we measure it? And that typically has been the sort of barrier for law firms engaging with content, where other sectors, retail, for example, have been a bit more keen to establish it. So the next section, the final section here, I'm going to give you a bit of a guide of how to go about tracking it. Okay, so just touching back on the campaign setup sheet, so where we talked about the 3 different colors of awareness, content, middle funnel content, and bottom of the funnel content or end of the funnel content, we looked at keywords. So one of the measurements that you're going to look at is the keywords that you select and the blog titles that you create. You're going to be looking with a basic keyword ranking tool. There are hundreds of thousands out there. Just look at the progress of those keywords. Big tip, first of all, speak to your IT teams or drop me a private message and I'll come back to you. The key to this is having the blog installed on your site and then making sure that it is directly fed into Google News. So when we release an article on our blog, within about 5 or 6 minutes, it gets indexed and listed in Google News. So you need to go through that process first before you do any of this. So if you, again, jump on the inquiry form on our website, jump on the chat now, send me a private message. My email address is adonaldson@hitsearchlimited.com. Limited is spelled out in full, and I'll come back to you straight away and tell you how you can go about that. So measure your keywords, use a keyword ranking tool once you've got your blog set up. You'll then be able to use that progress. So you might be 100th position on a particular keyword, medical negligence, work claims, for example, you might be 100th position. But after you've released 20 articles targeting that one keyword or keywords around that, you'll start to find that there's a large volume of keyword ranking improvements that you'll have made across a wide range of those keywords that you're targeting, just because Google loves to see your blog organically growing and will apply a lot of value to those keywords because of that. So keyword ranking is really important. The second area of, in fact, I'll come on to that in a second. One point I wanted to just make here is we use a piece of software from a keyword ranking point of view called Advanced Web Ranker. Now, again, it's a keyword software, but what it does, and again, run this by your IT teams, but you're able to link Google's webmaster tools into this keyword ranking software. And the reason why that's important is because the only way organically to really understand your keyword improvement is using the impression data from Google Webmaster Tools. So what this web ranking system will do is it links directly and via a feed into Google Webmaster Tools and pulls down the information and can give you a much more accurate perspective, which links me nicely onto my next point on the position of keywords and the traffic impact that that's having. So that links me nicely onto Google Analytics. Most of law firms that we deal with have Google Analytics installed. Again, if you don't and you want some help with this, give me a shout, adonaldson@hitsearchlimited.com, and I'll come back to you and tell you how really quickly and effectively you can do that. But what Google Analytics will allow you to do is it allows you to look at the top content. It's called Top Content Referral Report, and that gives you an idea of the article title, which will be something like yourlawfirm.co.uk/medical negligence claims, it'll be able to look at that blog article, or it might be, sorry, /blog/medical negligence claims, for example. It'll be able to look at that /blog/medical negligence claims page URL, and it'll be able to follow that report straight through to a lead. So you can start to measure your keywords improvements, the volume of keywords that's generating, and you'll be able to follow those keywords via the piece of content through into the actual inquiry stroke lead that's been generated. And finally, what we do is, for our law firms, we also apply our own piece of telephone tracking software, so we can actually measure not just down to lead through analytics, but we can also measure down to a specific phone call called to each individual channel source, so SEO, PPC, email, online display, whatever the channels that we'll email, whatever the channels that we're working with on behalf of that client. And we can essentially track that right through to a specific phone number that's assigned to each of those channels, or we can assign a specific phone number to every single awareness piece, middle funnel piece, and end of the funnel piece of content that you create. So we can show you that squeezing of users down through the journey, through the funnel. Hopefully that's been of use. That point's really key. And then finally, and also sticking with the analytical theme, a bit of a buzzword at the moment, attribution modeling. Essentially, what we want to try and understand, and going back to our original, right at the top of the webinar, where we talked about our inbound marketing framework, to help us understand who is moving from stranger through to promoter across the whole journey, we need to understand and attribute various stages, I guess, is the best way to look at it, from that first visitor finding a piece of content to coming on the site and then maybe leaving, and then a week later coming back, and then leaving and then coming back. And that happens often through different channels. And in our experience of looking at attribution models for clients, excuse me, we tend to find that content marketing is not just a referrer source, but also a constant touch point across the journey. So that's why it's so important, and again, that's something that I mentioned at the start. But let's look at some of the more, I mean, attribution modeling is a massive topic again, so feel free to come to me and I'll go into a bit more detail, but I'm sort of going to try and keep these webinars to around 40-45 minutes and then questions thereafter. So I'm conscious that we'll probably run out of a bit of time here, but just to touch on some of the more favorites or sort of I guess more popular models from an attribution modeling point of view. First one is position-based, or as per the graphic, the bathtub model. And essentially what this looks at is it looks at each referring stage in the journey before a user made an inquiry or generated a lead for a claim of some description. And it applies more emphasis or more weight or attributes more value to the start and the end of that process. So let's say the visitor arrived from PPC, and then they went to a content marketing piece, and then ended up via the organic results and then made a claim. In that example, a position-based system would raise the attribute higher value to PPC and SEO and a lower value but equal value across the middle two processes of content marketing. And this is one of the most popular and pretty much one of the most advised models that we look at, and I'll come back to why once we've gone through all of the other ones. The other one, which is, again, pretty popular, is first touch. So in that example of PPC, content, SEO, PPC would get all of the value, so 100% of the value. And this is important to go back as far as we can to understand the biggest possible picture of that user's journey from the original touch point to the end. But this model applies most value to that start point. And the reason being is that it values the original attracting source beyond anything else. Finally, which is the most common used at the moment, if people aren't familiar or don't use an attribution model, is last touch. It's the standard metric that Google Analytics, Google AdWords, and many other pieces of software use. So it essentially ignores the journey before the last converting channel. So in the example of PPC, content, SEO, it will ignore PPC, ignore content, and just give the value to SEO. Not really much value in understanding the wider journey here, so I'd ignore that. Linear is basically saying, if we've got a 4-stage process, let's give 25% to each of the stages. Quite simple. The final one is time decay, which basically sort of says the earlier the journey, the less of the weighting, or the earlier the journey, the higher of the weighting, and then it decays in value over time. So let's say it might start off with PPC being sort of, I don't know, 60%, and then it might go down to 30%, and then it might go down to 5 and 5 for the last 2 stages of the 4-stage process, or it might be the other way around. The most advised one, really, and again, as I mentioned earlier, is going to be the bathtub, essentially, or what is technically called a position-based. And the reason being is it gives value to the original attracting channel or source. It also gives equal value to the converting source, and then it applies some value to the middle touch points. This is the one I would recommend for law firms particularly. So again, apologies, we've sort of skimmed over what is such a massive topic. I do believe we've got a booklet on our download section. If you click on that on our website, hitsearchlimited.com, limited spelt out in full. On the download section, there is a separate booklet just discussing the topic of attribution modeling, so please feel free to jump on that. And essentially, the end of the journey is nigh. I'm afraid we've reached the end of our time. Essentially, what we're looking to do with content marketing is really generate high quality, cost effective leads. Through PPC, really you, I guess, are sort of hamstrung in some way because you need to pay for leads. And if you're getting leads below say 200, 250, 300 pounds these days via your PPC channels, you're doing reasonably well. Anything over that, it's probably not cost efficient, particularly for the lower fixed fee cases of 500 pounds, you're not making a lot of money off that. So content marketing and law firms, in my opinion, need to start turning more to content marketing, because number one, if you're using an agency to do that, you're just buying the agency's hours to do that for you, so it's cost efficient in that way, and the traffic is unlimited, essentially. If you're doing content marketing in-house, the only cost is your existing marketing team cost. We don't need to pay for anything specific. Google Analytics is free. Advanced Web Ranker is a few dollars. So there's not a lot that needs to go into it, essentially, if you've got the expertise in-house, apart from your salaries, essentially, if you factor in an ROI in that instance. So it is, in my opinion, working with many legal clients over many years, the most efficient way to generate high-quality, cost-efficient leads. So thanks, everyone, for attending and listening. Thanks also for downloading our ebook. If you haven't, then please do so. Go to the legal section on our downloads site, and you'll see it there. We're also offering your firm a great stepping stone into effective content marketing. So what you'll get essentially is, after this webinar, we will email you the links to sign up for webinar 2, 3, and 4. So webinar 2 is utilizing social media for your law firm. So we'll go into some details about how to use social media. Webinar 3 is making your mark with on-site content. So how can that make a big difference in terms of generating high quality, cost efficient leads to your law firm? And then webinar 4, I believe, we'll get the dates across to you. It's on the landing page of the link that we'll send you. Webinar 4 is in about 2-3 weeks, I believe, and that's becoming an industry authority. So essentially, how do you become this authoritative voice in your specific niche areas? So as I've mentioned all along, we are offering a 3-month content plan or content marketing analysis. So we will email you the link thereafter. Feel free to utilize that. We are limiting this because obviously it's going to take us quite a long time to produce some of these, so first come first serve sort of thing. But anybody that's registered for this webinar is more than welcome to request that, and we'll send you the link to request that after this transmission. So there's been no questions that I can see in the chat, so let me just have a quick look. No, can't see anything there. So thanks very much for attending, and do feel free to register for the other 2 webinars as well. I believe that if you've registered for this webinar, you'll get the invites for the other ones as well, but I will check that. But yeah, feel free to look at our download section. We're updating articles on within our legal news section all the time as well. So hopefully you found this of use. Any questions, please do drop me an email. Again, adonaldson@hitsearchlimited.com, limited spelled out in full. And thanks very much for listening.